Okay. Dobar dan, ja sam Erik, ne znam slovensko. Oh. Okay, that means I don't speak Slovenian, but anyway, today we want to discuss the bright future of music streaming and possible side effects in English. Before my wonderful panelists, Olya, Sami and Steffen will introduce themselves shortly, I want to share some figures with you which might be interesting. According to Goldman Sachs, the music industry will hit $41 billion by 2030. Streaming will account for 34 billion of the total revenues. 28 billion come from paid subscriptions, very interesting. 6 billion will come from ad-supported freemium models, and physical, 700 million. Not worth mentioning, but not enough. Last week, the US Copyright Royalty Board decided a substantial increase of the revenue paid to songwriters from 10.5% to 15.1% over the next 5 years. This is the largest increase in the history of the CRB. So in practical terms, that would mean a near jump of 44% in royalties, for example, from 5,000 to 7,200 US dollars. So wonderful figures. Everybody's super excited. Okay, let's see if we can dig deeper into this. So before we talk about like the shiny future and possible limitations of a rather fragmented streaming market, gatekeepers, and some effects on the music culture, I'd like to ask Sami to start, to introduce yourself, and then go on, and then we start with our discussion. Thanks.
Okay. Good morning. I'm Sami Andrews. I'm CEO of Deviate Digital, which is a digital advisory, but I'm ex-head of digital at a few record labels, also artist manager and an ex-promoter and ex-tour manager. I've got a different... Oh, and I owned a data and analytics company for streaming data, so I wear quite a few different hats.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Olya. I work at a company called The Orchard, which is a digital distributor, and I oversee Russia and Eastern Europe for the company.
Good morning, I'm Steffen. I'm working for Fraunhofer Institute and leading a digital media group there, and I'm working for metadata and IP and music rights in technology for more than 15 years, teaching also lessons in German Pop Academy for metadata and blockchain.
The good stuff.
Oh. That's right. So we have a lot of expertise sitting here this morning. I'd like to start with Olya. I have a question. Among other things, you're an expert if it comes to Eastern Europe and the Russian music market. Since we want to also talk about limitations, how do you participate as an artist or label in this shiny streaming world if you produce music for a market that is cut off from the major platforms such as Spotify? Okay, I'm not saying Deezer because you just learned Deezer is in Russia actually, but let's say if you work in a market that has no access to Spotify, such as Russia.
Not only, like in Eastern Europe, there are also territories where some key players are still not there. I mean, very close to in Croatia, there is no Spotify, no Apple Music.
There's no Spotify in Slovenia, I learned as well.
Yep. So in Russia, I think for many companies and big companies, Russia is still, what is it? And sometimes to go and play on this market, it's maybe something very successful, maybe not. And so Spotify had their attempt to launch in there, and I think it was about 4 years ago. They made decision not to go on this market.
What are the reasons? What's the argumentation? Why not entering the market?
They said they were not ready, and they thought that the Russia also were not ready economically and politically. And they were right, actually. In a few months after that, Rebel flopped And but still, Apple is very successfully doing in Russia, and counting Russia is one of their top 5 territories. Although Apple products are not the most popular one in the territory, and also in Russia, I think also mentally for consumers, it's easier to have everything, let's say, for free. Even if it's not free, but it seems like it's free, they will probably use it.
So how do consumers access to content? I mean, we talked about Yandex. There's the Yandex platform, which is rather like a gray market solution, I learned.
I'll get to that, but for let's say for Russian people, it's easier for them to find something online, to to go and download it, and then I don't know if it's closed, just crack the code and then put it on your device, and to do many things before you just can listen to music, not just you click and you play and you listen to it. And so freemium models will work well in Russia, and but they trying to do premium as well. The let's say Yandex, as you mentioned, which is Russian Google. It's a very good search engine, and everything they have. The Yandex Music is a kind of thing on the side, and it's only available in 4 territories, which is Russia, Ukraine, Kazakhstan, and Belarus. They have very good potential, but again, it's if you use Yandex, you probably use Yandex Music, but they're not really going any further just as streaming service or music service. There are, of course, very big thing called VK, VKontakte, which used to be something like Facebook and Pirate Bay together. Yeah. So you could go and chat with your friends and share files with music, with films, with anything, absolutely totally for free. And there were no legislation about whatsoever, and all the artists and right holders, they were pissed off about it. Why is going on? So now it's legal service. All the right holders get money, not much, but they do, and they have their own streaming service, an app, actually a very good app called Boom. And I think that we will see the growth of this service, because Russia is huge territory, and already everybody on VK, because forget Facebook, no one uses Facebook in Russia. It's VK.
Just on VK, so we work with the Prodigy in a band called Herds, and both of them, and a while ago a band called Skunk Anansi. Mm-hmm. All of them play stadiums in Russia, but couldn't sell a fucking record if they tried. Sorry.
I was about to ask about the business models behind these services.
But the interesting thing with the VK, the Russian Facebook, when it tried to legitimize and start paying, they actually directly reach out to artists. They help support them with touring to some degree and promotion in a way that we don't see with Facebook. So it's an interesting model that's both a streaming service to some degree and a social network and a promotional route for bands.
What do we hear about the business? I mean, this is also part of a business model, which I think is actually pretty interesting. Also, if it comes to
I don't know that they had one for a while.
Yeah. But what do you hear about? What do artists say about these services? They're like a business model or a business case for them, or is it more like, as you said, like gray zone, promoting content, but rather not getting paid for it?
I think you're a little bit, ahead, like in the Central Europe world, where in Eastern Europe and Russia, there's a lot of education needs to be done on pretty much all levels of music industry, and it's good that we can see an interest, and we can see that that things are happening in the territories, and of course the example is just here, just there. Everyone can see what's possible to do, and maybe you pick it fast. So this is what I can see what's going on in Eastern Europe and Russia. So the example and experience of what we have in US, UK, and so on, picked up very quickly. And for artists and labels, of course, it's just a great opportunity to to put like music further and be available for a lot of a lot of people. This is what they look for in terms of marketing. If you ask, then all models work differently, of course.
And what would you what would be your advice to artists in regions without this existing streaming infrastructure?
I think for artists, there's pretty much all the like key stores, and what they do, they you can go and you read, you can understand what they're doing, and do a lot for artists, and like pages and hubs where you can go, and as an artist you can do many things yourself. And I think for artists and labels, it's important to understand how it works, and just go and already start doing things, playing with this, because sooner or later stores will be on the markets, and if the artists and labels and whoever wants to be prepared, then it will help a lot understanding and already like the knowledge of what to do and how to do.
One question into the audience: are the Slovenian guys attending today? Because I have a question. I talked to Steffen this morning about local or regional streaming services. Then the streaming service Vibendo popped up. Does anyone know Vibendo? Like a Balkan-focused stream? Okay, yeah, I take it as a no. Okay, thanks. Excellent. Because there was the other question. Are there any like regional solutions that could help if you don't have like the international players? But as it seems, it's maybe hard. I mean, in the Russian case, it seems to be working, but maybe not with a proper business model for artists, at least. So the solution for the moment would be like to participate in the international platforms, but maybe not reaching your local audience. So is this sort of
it depends. I think all the territories they work differently, and we'll need to see case to case.
It depends where. Sorry. So it depends as well if you're an artist or a label, whether you're focusing on the market where the service doesn't exist. If you want to distribute your music to the world where the streaming services are, then you still need to go through that route, and you still need to know how the system works and how the ecosystem works and how the deals work. If you want to have your music played in the UK, the US, South America is coming, online in a big way at the moment.
Yeah, it's a very good point, and actually I had in mind that's we're talking about streaming, digital, music, all this. It's kind of there's no borders really. It's music can migrate like all over the world, and of course we know that we're here. Let's say I live in London, but I'm not from London, and so I'm not from UK, but I do listen to
there's still like
music.
Geo blocking.
Yeah, there's a
is an obstacle, or the great Chinese digital wall. Because this would be another interesting territory nobody knows about.
Data borders.
Yeah. Another question for the audience.
There's some seats down here, by the way.
Yeah,
if anyone wants to sit down, just.
Is anybody in the audience familiar with the Chinese music market? Anyone? So you probably know the most popular streaming services in China?
They have their own system. I don't know how it's called.
There's like Tencent, no? one of the big digital players, and
who are doing deals with other.
And they have there are services like QQ Music and Kugu and Kuvo. I guess nobody has ever heard of them, but they have like 600 million monthly active users. I mean, this is kind of weird. So talking about the Great Wall,
if you now as a label or an artist want to distribute globally, you do need to know what services exist in the different markets and check that your distributor or yourself are distributing and what the deals are. I mean, some of it's the Wild West. Still.
So since I wanted to talk about the limitations of this streaming world where everybody actually says, oh yeah, everything is in order and just have to push out your stuff. I was always like I try to emphasize there are definitely regions. I mean, even if it comes to Russia, it's getting complicated. If it comes to China, it's getting totally complicated.
Also, I mean, when we're looking at distributing globally, things like the metadata become so important if different territories, but especially things, you know, like how people are discovering music now, like the smart speakers. Beyond your phone and searching on your phone, people are asking smart devices to serve music, and when they're asking them, they're not necessarily asking for the artist name or the track name. They're saying, play me music to cook to, play me music to do something else to, play me music to relax me, play me music that has the lyrics about rain in. And a lot of the music that we release in the West is all tagged in English. But anyone here, anyone in Germany, Slovenia, you wouldn't ask Alexa in English to play music in English. So even the way that you deliver music now, you need to think about all of the data that's attached to it if you want it to be discovered in different devices and in different territories.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the
right.
metadata is the new cover. So if
Yeah,
you
we
focusing on graphic design
Yeah.
in the early days, because you have to look very shiny and bright in the record store, now it's even more important to have shiny, glossy, understandable, machine-readable, exact metadata.
And here comes the advice from this panel. Artists, make sure your metadata are in place and okay and right. But we can talk about metadata later, because Steffen has some interesting new upcoming projects we want to present shortly. Steffen, I would like to come back to this news about the US Copyright Royalty Board decision, 44% jump in royalties. How does this actually affect contributors outside the US, and what do they have to consider if they want to benefit from this race?
So first of all, it's very nice that also songwriters and authors get more defined in this law from the US Copyright Office. But if you really want to distribute your music, then for instance in the US, you can, as a streaming service, you can say, okay, there is maybe money, I can't distribute them. And according to a study from Berkeley Music Institute, Fair Music Transparency, there is 20 to 50% of the money is not going to the original rights holders. That's a gap. 20 to 50% the money. You can ask where the money is going now. And I've something discovered last week by myself, doing metadata all the time of things, and I have also a band. And I'm strictly doing all this metadata process. And last week there was Sound Exchange. Somebody familiar with Sound Exchange? This is a collecting society for neighboring rights in the US. And they have published all the lists from all streaming services in the US with more than 60 million songs, where streaming services, oh, excuse me, I don't know where this money should go from. So every track from me is there. There's every major artist from Germany is in this list. And I personally know I gave the correct data to them, to everybody. How the hell could this work, that there's a stripping out metadata? Maybe per default? I don't know. I don't have an answer. But the problem is, you can keep an eye on your metadata, but you're never sure how this will work out. And that's the problem. I'm listening to metadata panels on South by Southwest in Germany, all over Europe, and always sitting the stakeholders of the music business and saying, oh, we have a problem with the metadata. And then every time, somebody from the audience standing up and saying, why don't you solve it? Why don't you share your silos of metadata? And they're looking in their eyes and saying, oh no, we won't do that. Never. So how could we imagine that this would become better? I don't believe that.
So what's your advice? Like hands-on, what
You
should...
can do whatever you want, because you have to do, and you can only guess if your data will reach the right at the end. So that's only a guessing, and the problem would be, please stakeholders sit together, and solve this, because it's not a problem of the creative people, it's not a problem of the musicians. They can do anything, but they are not responsible for delivering the metadata between the services and all this stuff. They are not responsible.
There's the Open Music Initiative, which was set up by Berkeley and MIT to some degree, but it's all of the major services, all the major labels. My company are in it. There's about 150 companies, which is focused around the development of blockchain. I know we're going slightly off topic here, but we're going back to the data feeds. That at the moment, I always affectionately refer to it as a clusterfuck. It's like the data is everywhere, and it is wrong, and it's siloed with different services. But there are initiatives like Open Music Initiative and a few others that are trying to form a decentralized database that artists and rights holders can feed into, that all of the services would feed off. So that there are things in process. We're nowhere near that though, and there is a lot of missing money that isn't distributed appropriately, owing to wrong metadata. So it couldn't be more important that you check that your data going in is correctly, but whether it comes out correctly is still anyone's guess.
So it's not really off the track. It's just a bit boring maybe, but I think it's totally relevant. Therefore, we want to torture you with this relevant stuff. And I think it's there's also another or new initiative we can talk about afterwards. Coming to another obstacle in the wonderful streaming world. Sammy, any artist can deliver content to Spotify, Deezer, and alike through services like TuneCore, CD Baby, DistroKid, and alike. Does this mean all artists get the same visibility on the platforms automatically?
No.
Thanks. Could you please elaborate?
Well, yes, we work. Yeah, good chat. We work with a range of different artists. So one of the things in my company that we do is digital marketing, streaming advisory, and playlisting advisory. To artists, self-releasing artists we work for, right up to Annie Lennox and Prodigy and some other people. And the process is very different depending who you are. There is so much music being released now, and that's the thing that I always try and say to artists, the volume of music, we've never produced as much music as we do now, and I think that's a great thing. But when you deliver through, when you self-release, you'll be put into systems, and the editors, specifically of playlists, if we're talking about playlists as opposed to promotion, get bombarded every day by thousands and thousands of tracks. Now, if you're with a larger distributor, they have, and especially things like, we've got Merlin for independent members who have access to pitch tracks specifically into playlisting, but as an independent artist, that's much harder to get in front of the curators, but that doesn't mean it's impossible, is the thing. There are ways and means. Firstly, if you have a good track, if you've released a good track, and it's getting traction on its own, it might very well get featured across the services. That they look out for that. They have algorithms that they check, and if you propel above a certain number, you automatically click into some algorithms, and you will be considered for different playlists. But there are also a load of independent playlist curators. So that might be one guy sat in his bedroom that has a playlist with 500,000 followers that's actually a really decent playlist. So what we do for smaller artists and what we advise artists coming up is to approach those independent curators. If you're not getting any traction with the services themselves, you can go and approach the people that make the playlist independently, and we kind of pepper it. So we try and get bands into 20 or 30 smaller playlists, but each of those playlists might generate a shitload of plays, which then clicks you into the algorithms, which then goes in. And these people are identifiable. They like to shout about the fact that they're curators. If you go on Twitter and type in playlist curator in the search, you will find some of these people, and then you can approach them. So that there are ways and means of accessing that.
Okay, so takeaway would be take care of your playlist relations in a way.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing is to nurture those relationships. In an older model, and not even older model for the music industry, we still rely on radio heavily everywhere globally. We're talking about streaming, but traditional radio still plays a role. And you have to look at these playlist curators now as exactly as those people.
Yeah.
And if you get one curator that puts out your first 2 singles in their list, make sure you send them the third and maintain those relationships. But it doesn't... Being an independent artist now, you've never had more freedom, actually, to be an independent label or an independent artist, but you still have to really put the work in to be able to get the visibility and to be able to get the promotion.
Yeah.
But you can also focus on the algorithm, maybe to cheat that. So we don't know how the algorithm works from the Echo Nest. Yeah. There are, if you really looking to Spotify, you see really some strange results sometimes. So there was a time, for instance, when Rammstein was not at Spotify because they are there for 2 years or so. If you were typing in Rammstein, there were a lot of Rammstein cover bands. They were focused on just grabbing that traffic, and they had massive amount of plays because Rammstein was not there. And there are another people who are trying to cheating the algorithm with metadata. For instance, there is, I've heard in Germany, the most important search in Alexa is Alexa, play music. And that's why people are cheating the artist name music in it and the track name music, so that the relevance coming up with such a search is bigger. But, of course, the guys from Amazon are also quite smart. They try to put this back, and there are some artist names which really weird coming from major labels. If they are promoting some strange music, they have also a lot of plays, and I don't know why. So it's also cheating with metadata is maybe a good recipe for somebody who wants to try something out.
If you want to
because there's no transparency in any algorithm from the Echo Nest or from Deezer or whatever. So that's the problem. You of course can say, okay, there are curators, and then you can guess on the algorithm, but what if the algorithm makes something just like George Orwell? There's one animal more equal than the other, and it is written in a contract behind closed door. We don't know.
If you want to hack the system, start your Beatles cover band now, and go straight up into the playlist.
Search looking for an artist who is banning their tracks from Spotify and then doing cover versions. Then you will get money.
I would maybe add a little bit. If you decide to do all this and content and contact all the curators and editors and everything, I think as an artist, like it's best if you have a plan what you're gonna do after that. And make sure your link is working. Your link is working.
Yeah, and making sure it is relevant. We get a lot of bands who just, you're releasing a punk song and you've approached a pop playlist. I mean, it sounds really simple, but it's such a waste.
It does make, people are not very happy. Like,
yeah. And then also there's tools now, and a lot of the independent distributors actually have started offering them for save to follow the artist and saving playlist and save tracks. And if you use those, a lot of the time they're linked to social network signups. So we for nearly every independent band that we work for, when we release a track or just before we release a track, we utilize their social network followings and do a save to library widget for Spotify, Apple, Deezer. We can do it for, but it means that we get all of their email addresses. We get all of their data, we know who they are, so we started converting our streaming service fans into email addresses, which ultimately is fucking great. I mean, it means we can do what we want and sell whatever we want anywhere else. And they're the same thing to up your numbers. Those are brilliant things, and there are free tools available now, and again, most distributors offer them.
Okay, so takeaway would be do your homework, do your playlist relations, look out for tools that might be helpful, cause, I mean, and this, since we're talking about the limitations, and we do have an access problem here. There are gatekeepers, like the Spotify playlist teams whatsoever, and they are the bottleneck, and it won't be or it won't change in the near future. I mean, the power of streaming services like Spotify, and Spotify is like the biggest, as we all know. And
well, it is, but when we're talking, we always, especially I think because of where we're from, we always mention Spotify and Apple and Deezer.
Yeah.
Amazon
Yes.
are an incredible...
Also with a lot of power, of course. And
They're
Yeah.
going to be huge. I mean, well, they already are huge, but I mean, and they're not just going. Music is an add-on for Amazon. They're going for the world. They're doing healthcare, restaurants, delivery. But when we talk about streaming services, Amazon are an incredibly serious player at the moment.
Absolutely. And we must not forget, I mean, that this system won't change in the near future. I mean, Spotify is planning to go public soon. So that means they're going to have more money to, I don't know, to give as a kickback to artists, maybe not, maybe to give as a kickback to their shareholders. But anyway, they will stay. So we have to think about workarounds, and I think this is really important, because this is another question I'd like to touch quickly. So it seems, I mean, there was this big promise of the big platforms like Spotify. The idea was like of selling the music long tail through the platforms, or democratize the back catalog in a way. So, but with this whole playlist idea and how the rankings work, I mean, this idea is buried, isn't it? I mean, is it really still a tool to sell the back catalog? No?
Every record label that I know, without exception, that owns catalog, older recordings, are making a fortune, actually, from catalog. It's put money... So, some people, and let me give you an example of this. So my old record label owned a load of music that had never even been digitized, and it is really chilled out world music, and they'd just never done anything with it. Finally did something with it and put it up, and we put it into a load of yoga playlists. They're now earning a lot of money. You wouldn't believe how many people A, do yoga globally, or B, listen to yoga playlists. So similarly, we have sleep playlists, which are one of the most revenue-generating playlists in the world. The catalogue recordings, and it's not just for large bands, it's being smart about how you place your music. It's thinking outside of genre, so it's context now to music. It's activity, it's moods, you know, but anything, but specifically things like sleep, yoga, but you know, music to make babies go to sleep is huge, and people put that playlist on and they leave it running all day. You know, there are smart ways outside of the sorry, I got a 5 a.m. flight this morning and I'm feeling a bit tired. But there are routes outside of the traditional models. If you can be smart about how to approach it, and again going back to the metadata, if you can include some of these things so that you have context to whatever track is being released, then you can absolutely make money from catalogue. And I honestly don't know any labels that aren't. And especially for older bands, say that they've already earned their money. They're just earning on top of something that they may have earned, you know, there's sort of no limits. And so the long tail, and also the data. So yesterday I put a tour pre-sale live with Spotify. Does anyone know about these with the streaming services? So you can sell tickets directly to your top listeners, and it's something that's quite specific to Spotify at the moment. It's not open to everyone. It's got their fan first model, but it's so bloody impactful. So we did it with an artist called Jeremy Loops, who's from South Africa. He's got millions and millions of streams, but he doesn't stream or doesn't get a lot of playlisting in the UK or Europe. We sent out an email to around 50,000 of his followers that were classed as people that listen to his music often. They're not someone that's heard a track once in a playlist. They're someone that actively engages with his music on the platform. And we went out. The open rates are through the roof. Loads of people bought tickets, but more than that, it lets those people know he has new music in the market and that he's around. So when you're looking at the value of streaming, it's not just about the music, it's the potential for the data and to be able to have that and improve that relationship directly with artists, with the fan base and artists.
Okay, it seems we have to obey and just say, okay, we embrace it. No, but I'm not at that point yet.
All right, okay.
One
Can
thing.
I mention very quickly? This is great what Sami said, and this is when the artist is active and things are working in his ecosystem. But we talked about playlists, and we also can see now there are some artists that are very popular on a playlist, they go on playlists, they on many playlists, and they, streaming services, they are popular, but they cannot sell any ticket to the show. It's 3 people come to the show, and this is another, part of, you might be very, very doing great on playlists, but live, no one knows you, and again, you need to build your ecosystem around you.
Talking about ecosystem, what I still don't understand, I mean, everybody, it's common sense, I guess, that merchandise is still an important. Yeah, how does that work? I mean, this.
And again, I hate going back to Spotify always, but Apple. Not all streaming services are equal is something that it's important to know as well.
Memorize.
Some of them pay you less. Some of them give you half the amount of data back, and don't provide a lot of services. The 2 that we work with often are Deezer and Spotify, who do actually have a lot of tools for artists. And one of them is the ability to sell merchandise, which complicates matters slightly. So if you think traditionally of a service, that relationship is usually owned by a distributor or a label because it's a storefront. But when you bring in things like live industry and merchandise, that's management and artist, which is a completely separate thing to the label, so that it's made our entire industry have to work together more, and also the artists and managers have to have relationships with the streaming services. But we usually, it's box sets and t-shirts for us, vinyl box sets. For a band who have a very strong streaming following, we sell loads of them. And there's a few pre-approved stores that you can work with. And also the live dates, the Spotify lists live dates. A lot of the services do, not Apple, which really pisses me off. But there's all of these tools there to do it, and it only adds to the income that you have, and again the relationship.
Yeah. Okay. And again, tools and extra services ecosystem is important, and we can all benefit from it, as it seems. Steffen, we were talking about some findings one of your students actually came up with, and I totally liked the concept of, since we are talking about streaming services as a gatekeeper, he came up with a concept, gatekeeping 2.0, which I thought was really interesting. Could you please elaborate? Because I like this idea. It's getting a bit on a meta level, but I think, because I still want to get down to the core of what we can do.
You can't talk about streaming without talking about data.
Exactly.
The two are,
and
so
I think one just to introduce, to start with that, with a good example, because you are mentioning always Spotify. Spotify is not only a distributor. Spotify is a data company first. That's the thing they are saying about the Equinus. That's why they were buying Nyland in Paris, and they bought a blockchain company as well, media chain, and they exactly know what they want to do. And in the future, I think the labels and the publishers are more depending on that platform. And the question is when Spotify will begin the direct communication to the creative people. That's the first question. And that's why one of the students of the Pop Academy in Germany, he was looking for something new he has to explore, and he came up with the idea, I have to make some things around gatekeeping. And then he came up with Gatekeeping 2.0, because he was first analyzing all the traditional theory of gatekeeping, traditional media, and he found out that he mentioned, maybe I forget the exact name, but he defined Spotify as a kind of a really certified authority gatekeeper. This is something just like in other ecosystem, it's the government. And there was a really quite good work. I've read that last weekend, so it's really fresh. And I have to discuss this with him next week as well. But it's really that they are the gatekeeper, and he also find out that all the algorithms working together, that of course there are independent playlists, but the algorithm is bringing these playlists together. So there is a multiplying effect on if you are appearing in one playlist and then be reported to another place. And of course the playlists from Universal and from Sony are of course a lot of frequented. There are major releases. Everybody wants to hear that, and they are they reach more people. And this affects also the viral stuff on the playlist side of Spotify, and this together affects the Discover Weekly. So if you you can imagine that there is really very specific advance if you're coming in from a big list, just like already Topsify from Warner, I think, and something like also Universal has that.
I actually tried to start the independent one. We tried to start
Which is the independent one?
playlist brand. We haven't fucking got one.
Yeah.
They couldn't agree on it. All the major labels have an independent playlist brand, and the independents don't. Don't get me started.
He was doing interviews directly with the developer of Spotify, so that he has quoted. Yeah, it's not. I think he has to make the work public because he was. I done the correction for him. Yeah, and at the moment it's not public, so that's the only thing I can say. But as soon as he got his certified, then he will make this work public.
Yeah,
I forced him to do this. So.
Maybe one.
I can share this later.
Maybe
yeah.
one offering I want to make to the audience at this point. Maybe we can share some sources and articles and put it into a list. And if you're interested, just drop me a card or whatever, and we send you, like, for instance, the paper that Steffen mentioned. I think that would be a nice.
Yeah. Also, if you would like to see if your
list.
artist will receive money from the U.S. Copyright Office notice from Sound Exchange, so
yeah, maybe also interesting. Maybe.
Maybe you have money in the US and you don't know.
Coming back to one more time to your student, what I really liked about his findings was also like this relationship between the recommendation algorithm on one hand, which gives the user the impression that he gets his individual content, which is actually true for me as well. I like my release radar and everything. And on the other hand, due to the, let's say, the ranking of the playlists keeps you in a very old school chart-esque system. So, I mean, and these two factors, like giving you the impression that everything is totally individualized, and on the other hand, getting you all this, let's say, mainstream crap through the major plays. This is very interesting relationship.
The more they know about you, and this is true of any data-driven company, the more they know about you, the more relevance they can show you. And some people genuinely don't want to hear new music, and I know that sounds mad to say. Some people don't care. Some people just want to listen to what they know. Yeah. I'm really interested what services people in the room use, because we're talking about, like, who here uses Spotify? A few people. Apple? Some of you use both. Deezer? Another one. A different service? Google Play. I always forget about Google.
Amazon? So Amazon?
Amazon, anyone? And YouTube.
Yeah, YouTube.
Yeah. Okay. Just it's always just good so we know when we're talking about it. But it's the discovery, the algorithm-based playlists are absolutely incredible for artists. So one of the things that my old company did was track the number of plays and skips and things for playlisting data. And we were the first company to offer it to independent labels. And most independent labels had never seen that data. They had no idea how many plays were coming from playlisting. And those release radars and those algorithm-driven playlists can launch a band, genuinely can launch a band if it goes to enough people. But also some of the older playlists for catalogue are incredible. Some people just want to go and listen to 90s rock or, you know, whatever that's all they want to do, and they do it every day. And, you know, that's... So, and again, it depends, I guess, on your objective long term. But the more data that a service has on you... Also, we're in a turning point now where brand loyalty is very, very important, and this applies to things outside of music, but the more that these services know about you, and this goes back to smart assistants and smart speakers, you're much more likely as a consumer to stay with them because they know your preferences. Whereas if you go to a new service and they don't know all of those things, you spend time building a profile. And one of the things that people said about Apple Music when they launched is most people's iTunes libraries were like 20 years old. So they were serving them completely irrelevant now, music. But things like the services now are starting to build a profile around you. So the longer it goes, the more we'll know and the more will be recommended. But they are such an important part of new music discovery. And things like Release Radar and Discover Weekly are huge for bands.
So you mean
Discover
it's
Weekly,
not a paradox, but it's rather it follows the plan. If you say like on one hand, it gives you the feeling, and as I said, like for me, it actually works pretty well. I totally love things like the Release Radar on Spotify,
it's
for
funny
instance.
though for bands. We always get every band we work with goes, "Am I on New Music Friday?" And on Spotify, am I? And it doesn't matter if you fucking are or not. That gives you 30,000, between 30 50,000 plays, depending where you are in the list, and you're gone. Once you're in and out of that, and it's sometimes important to make artists and labels think further than that. It's a great tool to do something, but to go into all of the other lists is
okay. So it's not a paradox to get this individual feeling, and on the other hand, like get your really mainstreamy playlist on the other hand.
This was your question, and I would try to explain this how the student was describing this in his work. So first of all, if you're going to a service, we have unlimited capacity of music. It's really unlimited. And then somebody decides a Discover Weekly playlist which is strictly limited to 30 songs every week. This makes this playlist a kind of a medium, just like a newspaper is releasing a new kind of records reviews every Monday. And that's the difference. That's why they are really, this playlist is a special media gatekeeper 2.0, because this is authority, and we are then addicted to that, and we are going forward and of course producing more data. And coming to the data, you mentioning one thing we all forget. So if we have our profile on Spotify or on Amazon, do we really want to change the service because I have to build up my profile in the other service? Normally not. Everybody is guessing I'm really with this service for my life. But now came the European Data Protection Law, which is new and will be effective in May. Right. And there is one
effective
sentence.
in 3 months, right?
Does anyone in this room, if we say GDPR, does anyone in this room know what that is? No, what one?
It is
It's huge.
related to everybody, because this harmonizes the data protection law in whole Europe for all members. What most people forget, it's already existent, and there is a stop time when the so-called Übergangszeit. The transition period will end in May. That's the only difference then. And then all the authorities can ask for fines. And this is up to 4% of the turnover of a company on a year. Imagine Facebook, Spotify, and now came a really important sentence. You, as a European
Not everyone
citizen.
in the UK anymore.
Yeah, maybe
Good
you
for
not.
you.
But as long as you're a member in the EU community, you also have the right of portability. So if you want to change the service because maybe Spotify sucks in a half a year, you have the right to get your whole profile in a data list for you as a consumer, and the other guy from Deezer has to import this. So you have the chance for real competition. As a European citizen, you have the right to portability. And if somebody is not giving this to any service, and music is a good example for that,
You gotta sue them.
you can sue them.
You actually can. You also have the
Really?
right to be forgotten, and there's a lot of
Yeah, right to be forgotten, most people know, but the right to portability is so amazing for me as a customer, because then I have a free decision. I have the freedom to choose, because somebody sucks and I said, I can't change because my profile built up that long time. Keep on paying.
Okay,
no.
Another takeaway for today: privacy matters. And before we come to a little Q&A, just one quick announcement, because Steffen, you told me there might be some interesting visitor coming tomorrow, and
There's a European initiative, because you already said open music initiative, so everybody wants to solve the metadata chaos in the music business for eons of time. And nothing is happening. And the European Commission said, we don't believe that the music industry will solve this by themselves. We have to push them, and we install a system which hopefully will work. Everybody can think why the European Commission is working that out. It's quite simple. The digital music business is the only digital business where Europe is leading, with SoundCloud, Deezer and Spotify. And they have a problem because they have a lot of money back and they don't know which money they have to give out to whom, because they don't know it because of the missing data. So they have a problem investor-wise, and they have announced that they have to switch to the US maybe. And then the last European digital business is leaving Europe. This is a no-go for everybody in the European Commission. That's why they put together a lot of money, and they're asking member states to filing an initiative. And first, they asked Malta, a little state. They have no collecting society. So there is no industry who could say, oh, don't do that. So that's why Malta was starting this last year, and Slovenia is the second state, which is part of this initiative. And the third member state is Luxembourg, forced by Mr. Juncker personally. And they want to build a European repository for music rights, starting with independents, working together with OMI, with Imogen Heap, with Benji Rogers. So all these people are collected together in a broad initiative. And somebody who is initiated, he will hopefully visit the festival tomorrow, shortly. But I don't know if he really will be on a panel or something like that. But he will be here in Ljubljana announcing something with the Slovenian Secretary of State or something. I don't know. But we as Fraunhofer will also be part of the technical solution to filing a good problem, so registering metadata.
What's the name of the guy, just in case somebody wants
Holm
to...
Keller. His last name is Keller, so if you're eventually stepping on Holm Keller tomorrow, he will be arriving at 12, then you can ask him directly, what the hell are you doing? So that's a Slovenian initiative as well.
Okay,
so
super, excellent point. We have 5 minutes for questions. I know it was a lot of stuff that we talked about today.
Boring metadata.
Boring metadata stuff. Anybody interested in talking about boring or asking about
Again,
boring
metadata stuff is the lifeblood of streaming.
Of course it is. Questions? Comments? Criticism?
Okay.
Can you come a bit closer? Oh, no.
Hi.
Hey.
Hi. My name is Dejan Bošković from Serbia, representative for Fraunhofer Balkan for this region. So I know how the system works, but just to let you know, the problem for this region is we haven't Apple, we haven't Spotify, we just have Deezer. Google started, and mainly we are using YouTube.
Yeah.
So
we can see it in the data.
yeah. So all this information about data is useful for us. I mean, I'm getting through the Fraunhofer, but for the region which is not in the Balkan, so I cannot use it. Generally, I cannot use it here. So if you have any advice for YouTube, actually, or for Deezer, it will be much more helpful for us.
Mm-hmm.
This is the thing.
Interestingly, last week or the week before, there was some controversy because YouTube started artist profiles, which is kind of taken away from Vivo a little bit. That's on YouTube, and I'm sure that they're going to do more at some point. But Deezer specifically, Deezer is in a lot of markets. They've taken quite a smart route to market, and they've gone in areas where Spotify and Apple aren't deliberately, and it's not, whilst it's not a global service, we see a lot of traffic, especially from South America and from Eastern Europe and places that they are. So I think you still have to you still have to distribute globally, but it is trying to have those relationships with the services where they are here at the moment. YouTube, and I've said it publicly a few times, don't pay a lot of money, it's and also aren't particularly great with access to those fan bases in some ways, but being able to use those to be able to push through, whether it is touring or whether it's pushing through to a service somewhere else. I don't see the YouTube deals changing anytime soon, sadly. Google is a massive machine, and whilst I think we would all like some more money from YouTube. I don't think that's going to happen. So I think it's using them as you are at the, which you will be at the moment, but continuing to forge relationships with any service that is in the market. 'Cause they all apply, the things we're talking about here today apply to all the services to some degree, but it's in having those relationships and backing new services if things pop up. But I do think the expansion plans for Spotify and Apple, they will be in a lot of territories soon, I think.
Yeah.
But, you know, over time. So it's, but in the meantime, I know it's frustrating, especially when we're sat here talking about nothing but fucking Spotify and Apple. So, but it does still apply.
One more question. Yes, over there, please.
Expanding data for Slovenian market. How many people are using streaming services and which, like,
You don't have that many streaming services.
Tidal is available,
Mhm.
Google Play Music, Apple Music.
We can try to get some data. I mean, again, if you're interested in some recommended readings, papers and stuff, just drop us a card or give us your email address and we try to put something together.
It's homework for you to do.
Oh, it's my homework. Damn. Okay, yeah. So I also got homework. Any other questions? Okay, we're just in time. 1 o'clock. Here, nodding. Excellent. Yeah. Vala, thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you, Steffen, Olya, and Sammy for this great panel. Thank you, INES and the European Union for making it happen. And have a wonderful festival. Thanks.